You know what's wild, man? Every once in a while, you come across a story that completely shifts how you look at history, how you look at life, and even how you think about faith. And for me, one of the most powerful stories, one that honestly doesn't get enough attention in the modern world, is the story of Hazrat Khadijah, RA. Now, if you don't know who she is, buckle up because this woman wasn't just important, she was absolutely foundational. She was Islam's very first believer. Before there were millions, before there were communities, before there was even the word Muslim being used, there was Khadijah standing by the Prophet Muhammad. And dude, when you look at the context of that time, it becomes even more mind-blowing. Arabia back then was rough. It wasn't like today with podcasts, gyms, and iPhones. It was tribal, it was harsh, it was survival of the fittest. Women had almost no rights. But Khadijah, she wasn't playing by those rules. She carved out her own path. Khadijah's early life, more than just wealth, she was born into privilege, but privilege in that time didn't automatically mean respect, especially for women, but she earned it. She became this powerhouse businesswoman, a merchant who controlled caravans, who dealt with international trade. Imagine that in the 6th century, a woman running an empire of goods, negotiating deals, managing men. That's crazy. And people respected her for more than her money. They called her El Tahira, which means the pure one. Her reputation was spotless. That's not something you just buy. That's character. That's integrity. And in a culture where honor was everything, that kind of respect meant you were untouchable. On meeting Muhammad Salates before prophethood. Now here's where fate steps in. Muhammad, at this point not yet a prophet, was a young man known as Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy. People knew this guy never lied, never cheated, never played games. He was solid. And Khadijah, being the sharp entrepreneur, hires him to handle one of her caravans. And man, he doesn't just do the job, he crushes it. He makes profits, but more importantly, he treats people with fairness and respect. One of her servants comes back and tells her, this guy Muhammad, he's on another level. He's not just honest, he's noble. And Khadijah, she notices. She's been around men with wealth, with ego, with power, but here's this young guy who's got something different. Integrity. A bold proposal. Now this part blows my mind. Instead of waiting for someone to come to her, Khadijah makes the move. She proposes marriage to Muhammad Salates. Think about that. In a society that looked down on women making choices, she just said, yeah, I know what I want, and I'm going for it. This wasn't about status. She was already wealthier and older than him. She didn't need his money. She wanted his character. And man, that decision, that partnership becomes one of the most legendary marriages in history. The Cave of Hira. When everything changed, fast forward. They're married, they've built this beautiful relationship, they have kids, and Muhammad Salates is known all over Mecca as trustworthy. But inside, he's searching for truth. He spends nights meditating in the Cave of Hira, thinking, praying, reflecting, and then it happens. The first revelation. Angel Gabriel appears and tells him he's the messenger of God. Imagine that. You're sitting in a dark cave, meditating, when suddenly this powerful being appears, grabs you, and tells you to read. He's terrified. He runs home, shaking, confused, questioning everything. And who does he go to? Khadijah. This man is where her greatness shines the brightest. She doesn't panic. She doesn't call him crazy. She doesn't doubt him. She wraps him in a blanket, calms him down, and says words that are legendary. By God, he will never disgrace you. You keep good ties with your family. You're honest. You help the poor. You support the oppressed. She basically tells him, I believe in you. I know who you are. You're chosen for a reason. The first believer. And here's the turning point. She becomes the first person to accept Islam. Before his best friends, before his companions, before anyone else in the world, it's Khadijah who says, I believe. Man, let that sink in. The entire faith of over 1 billion people today, it began with one woman's faith, one woman's courage, one woman's standing beside the Prophet Sallallahu. Now this wasn't just some symbolic belief. Khadijah put everything on the line. When the Quraysh turned against Muhammad Salates, when they mocked him, when they boycotted him and his followers, Khadijah gave her wealth, her resources, her home, her everything. She stood by him when the world turned away, and Muhammad Salates never forgot that. Even years later, after she passed away, he would talk about her with so much love and respect that his other wives, like Aisha Bre, would sometimes feel jealous. That's how deeply she was ingrained in his head. Man, when we look back at people who shaped history, we usually think of kings, generals, inventors, the big flashy names. But what blows me away is how Hazrat Khadijah, this one woman, changed the trajectory of the world without an army, without political power, without even living long enough to see the full spread of Islam. Her power was belief. And sometimes belief is the most radical thing you can give. The boycott years, a woman's unshakable loyalty. Let's go into one of the darkest chapters of the Prophet's early mission, the boycott, when Muhammad started openly preaching Islam. The Quraysh, the elite of Mecca, went ballistic. They felt threatened. This new message of equality, justice, worshiping one God, it tore through their system of power. So they did what all elites do. When their power is threatened, they cracked down. They exiled Muhammad, his followers and his clan, to a valley outside Mecca. For 3 years, they were cut off from food, trade, and basic resources. People literally starved. Imagine hearing the cries of hungry children at night because no one in the city would sell them food. That was the level of cruelty. And where was Khadijah? Right there in the valley, suffering alongside the Muslims. She could have chosen comfort. She was wealthy, respected, and powerful enough to negotiate her way out. But she didn't. She stayed by the Prophet's side, sharing his pain. And here's what hits me. She used to be one of the richest women in Mecca. By the time the boycott ended, she had given everything she had for Islam. Her wealth was gone. Her health was weakened. But her loyalty, untouched. That's not just love, that's legacy. A year of sorrow. Not long after the boycott ended, tragedy struck. Khadijah, drained from years of sacrifice, passed away. That year became known in Islamic history as Am al-Huzn, the year of sorrow, because the Prophet ﷺ lost not just his wife, but his greatest supporter, his anchor. And man, you can feel the pain in the way the Prophet ﷺ remembered her. He would say, "She believed in me when no one else did. She trusted me when people doubted me. She shared her wealth when people deprived me." That's love, man. That's loyalty at a level most of us can't even imagine. Why the Prophet ﷺ never forgot her years later. When Islam had spread, when the Prophet ﷺ had thousands of followers, when he had political power, armies, respect, he never forgot Khadijah. He used to send food to her friends, honor her memory, and mention her constantly. Aisha, one of his later wives, admitted she was never as jealous of anyone as she was of Khadijah. Not because Khadijah was alive, but because even after death, she occupied such a sacred space in the Prophet's heart. Think about that. A love so deep that time, distance, and even death couldn't erase it. Khadijah's legacy for the modern world. Now here's where I think it really hits home for us today. We live in a world obsessed with material success, followers, money, influence, Khadijah had all of that. But what makes her unforgettable isn't her wealth, it's how she used it. She leveraged her privilege, her influence, her resources, not for herself but for truth, for something greater, for a mission that was bigger than her own life. And that's the blueprint, man. That's what makes her story timeless. You don't need to lead armies to change history. You don't need to be on billboards or magazines. Sometimes it's about standing firmly by what's right, even if the whole world laughs at you, doubts you, or tries to silence you. Khadijah proved that one person's faith, one person's courage, can ignite a movement that changes the world. Wrapping it up, why this story matters. So why am I telling you all this, man? Because stories like Khadijah's shake you awake. They remind you that behind every great movement, behind every monumental change in history, there are unsung heroes, people who may not be in the spotlight, but without them, the story would collapse. Hazrat Khadijah wasn't just the Prophet's wife. She was his confidant, his safe space, his supporter, his first believer. And without her, the early years of Islam could have crumbled under the pressure. When we talk about powerful women, independent women, role models, you can't leave her out of the conversation. She wasn't powerful because of how loud she was powerful because of how unshakable she was. And dude, if there's one thing we can take from her story, it's this. Believe in something bigger than yourself. Stand by the people you love when the world turns against them, and use your blessings not just for yourself, but to make a difference. That's Khadijah. That's the legacy.